Hi, this is Bill Vick, PF Warriors, and I am fortunate today to have two new friends who have an interesting story to share with me for you. And we're addressing in this short meeting of ours, first and foremost, a book that our first speaker, Dr. Michael Stevens, has just released. And then secondly, we're going to hear from a cystic fibrosis patient, Anna Payne, about living with CF and what that means. And I, of course, I'm an IPF patient, and I can chime in as appropriately. But I'd first like to start off, if I can, Dr. Stephen, would you just take a second and give us a kind of a 20,000 foot view of who you are and what you're about with the book you're doing and also your professorship at Jefferson and so forth?
Thank you. Absolutely, Bill. And it's a pleasure to be here and to present this. I'm an associate professor of medicine at Jefferson University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I did my internal medicine training in Boston and then decided I wanted to bring, restore the breath. That's my passion in life, is to restore the breath to people who have had it taken away from them. And I believe, clean air is a right. It's a universal right. And I wrote my book, Breathtaking, in order to highlight those two facts that having a clean breath is a right, and that we need to preserve it for all. There's been a tremendous decline in lung health in the United States over the past 50 years, with just astronomical increases in different lung diseases. And now we dealing with pollution, wildfires, and obviously COVID has affected the lungs. So this is the right time to highlight the importance of the breath.
Well, as I told my grandson, who's a pre-med student at Stanford, this is the right time to become a pulmonologist. So, yeah, there's a lot of emphasis on the lung and lung health, and it's really important. It really is
Yeah,
important.
no question. The COVID has sort of exposed the vulnerabilities of our lungs like never before, but these vulnerabilities have been there. We just haven't been talking about them enough. And you know that as an IPF patient, and we just need to do more to get the word out, to shine light on these diseases, to build up research in these diseases. What's going on in our atmosphere, and this vital connection between our lungs, which has always been celebrated, that's gone wrong a little bit the past few decades.
And Anna, you're so much more than a patient. You really are. I mean, I read your bio and some of the things you've done and are doing, and I'm inspired and I sit here in admiration. I mean, really, and I mean that. Tell us a little bit about yourself and also a patient's perspective of cystic fibrosis.
Well, thank you, Bill, for the tremendous compliments. Um, so I'm 33 years old. I'll be 34 next month. Um, Living with cystic fibrosis has obviously not always been easy. As the medication and science has definitely come a long way, so our outlook is looking better. The current life expectancy for someone being born today is, I believe, 47, because of the new medication that came out last year called Trikafta. It's really been like a huge game changer for a lot of people. So growing up, I was hospitalized every couple years essentially for what we call exacerbations of the lungs, where the lung function drops really low, have to go in and get antibiotic treatment for a couple weeks. And that has kind of tapered off as I've gotten older. When I was born, the life expectancy was about 17. When I became 17, 18, it was 30. So the way I look at it is I'm kind of living on borrowed time. I didn't think I'd even live this long. So my main goal is to try and use these extra years to give back, whether that's through volunteer work or joining boards and organizations. In any way I can try and give back to the community. That's kind of that's my goal. I work for local government, and I love my job. And that also provides me a way to give back to people every day. So, living with CF has taught me a lot of things. Taught me how to appreciate every day, how to appreciate life, that tomorrow is not guaranteed, that we have to take advantage of things without overthinking them and just go for it. Just go for it. Whatever it is you want to do, go for it. I don't think I'd have that same outlook maybe if I wasn't a cystic fibrosis, or rare disease patient. I truly believe it makes me appreciate life and appreciate other people, maybe a little differently than folks who are healthy.
It's so interesting to me because as I told Dr. Stephen, I'm not up to speed on cystic fibrosis. I have friends of mine that they have children that have it and adults that have it, and I know it from that perspective. But as I look at it as kind of an outsider with my own lung disease, IPF, and we face so many similar things, not so much in the drugs and treatments, but the regimen that I understand that you follow is almost like a regimen that a lung transplant patient would follow with IPF. You take lots of pills every day. You have to exercise every day, whether you want to or not. You go through all of that. You have to have a will of iron, I think. And yet you still manage to maintain a smile and a glimmer in your eyes, and you're living life large and proud. How do you do that?
I don't know. I think it's just kind of who I am. I don't know if I have like a good answer to that. But I think like I take about 50 pills a day. Do like 2 hours worth of breathing treatments. That's just to stay healthy. That's not if you're sick or something happens, that obviously everything increases. But I always have this mantra that like it could be worse, right? Like if this is the cards I was dealt, then we'll make it work, and it could be worse. In my line of work, working with county, local government, county government, I see a lot of folks who have things worse than I do. And mine's just my health, that if I can manage to maintain that, the other stuff, will fall into place. So I just try and have like a positive attitude that it could be worse, and things will, hopefully get better for everybody this year. So.
We want to talk about Dr. Stephen's book. However, when you write yours, and I'm sure you will, knowing all the things you do, please knock on my door and let me know when it's available, because it's going to be exciting. And Dr. Stephen, could we talk about your book a little bit? Because you've been in practice, 19 years or some number like that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You're teaching, you're also a clinician, you're practicing as a clinician. What brought you to want to do a book?
I got into pulmonary critical care medicine, to serve people like you and Anna, Bill. And that's been my life's passion. I walked into the intensive care unit as a resident. I saw all these patients falling off the cliff from lung disease. I saw these, older physicians helping them, pulling them back from this cliff. And I realized right there that, this is what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I gravitated more towards pulmonary medicine, so I could have a patient, a panel of IPF patients. I could have a panel of cystic fibrosis patients. And there's so many similarities between the two, tremendous courage, that the people who do the best have this attitude, sort of a bicycle theory of life, right? So what happens when you stop pedaling on a bicycle? You fall right over, right? So you just got to keep pedaling. You just got to keep pedaling and see where it leads you. Both diseases have made tremendous progress in the last, 10 years, both of them, but both of them also have this period where we need to go so much further, to get where we want to go. And that's why I wrote the book, and I tell stories like yours, Bill, and I tell stories like yours, Anna, about the amazing scientific discoveries that have happened, and the people like you all who are able to take advantage of it, because of the attitude that you have, and having your breath taken away is a very scary experience. It's a little bit of a suffocation. It's not being able to do what you want to do. Your world can get very small because we rely on the breath for energy needs, and when your world gets small, that can get very frustrating, and the frustration can get very overwhelming. And I talk about in my book, but I also talk about in my book how to get past that frustration, and presenting cases like yours, Bill, and yours, Anna, I think could really help shine a light to patients and to providers what we need to do to get past that frustration and take advantage of everything that we have.
You mentioned something I think is so important, and that is that We address the drug issue collectively as patients and families, caregivers, medical doctors, etc. And I think that is addressed very well. I think we do a pretty good job on things like exercise and diet and meditation, mind, etc. Nobody talks about that hidden elephant in the room, depression and anxiety. And I think all patients at some point in time go through some piece of that, some longer than others. I think it's fairly common. What is your experience as a doctor, clinician, and involved in this area?
You know, Bill, that's an excellent question. I'm really glad you brought that up. The only other disease other than pulmonary diseases that has exploded in the last 40 years are those associated with depression, drug overdoses. You know, we see this in the newspaper every day. So yeah, it's this hidden thing that needs to come into the light. The Cystic Fibrosis Foundation has been very forward-looking. So 5 or 6 years ago, they funded a mental health coordinator at every single site in the country,
Wow.
and we do mental health screening with 2 questionnaires at every single visit, and there's 4 visits a year, or at least there should be. Um,
What, what's the ballpark
but
number? How many CF patients are there in the United States, roughly?
so there's about 70,000 worldwide, and
70.
about half of them are here in the United States, about 35,000.
35,000 people, give or take, whereas in our community, we have, based on whose numbers you look at, about 170,000 patients. But what I hear you saying is there's the CF Foundation, which is legendary in what they do. I jokingly say to my friends, never stand between a goal and a CF mother because you'll get trampled. And that speaks well for them. It really speaks well for them. How do we, as patients, handle that thing, that depression, that anxiety? And I faced it. We've all faced it. I think in this community, Anna, you may or may not have, but I think it's more common than not. What are some of the steps you'd recommend or think about people taking that would make sense?
You know, I think it's a societal problem right now. You know, our resources are not up to what we need them to be. You know, 35,000 patients, we've put a lot of resources into them, but for IPF, you know, so I think talking to your provider about it, um, um, you know, we're very open to discussing this and getting resources. And you know, there is a little bit, I don't know if stigma is the right word, but you know, this thought that hey, this doctor's busy and we're just going to talk about medicines. No, 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 we are all very well trained to talk about this, and we want to talk about this. And as a doctor, you know, this is my problem too. I need to own this problem. And if you've got a doctor who doesn't want to hear about it, then you need to find somebody who's able to deal with it. We're starting we did a telemedicine study at and we just published a paper on it. We need to expand our telemedicine visits for mental health. It's simple. You don't need to do a huge deep psychoanalytical dive on people with these depression issues to help them feeling a lot better. You can train students to do this kind of counseling to make 80% of improvements. So there's a ton we can do as society. I would encourage patients to talk openly about them and to pursue resources, but there's also a systemic issue on the medical health end that we need to address, and telehealth could be a huge part of it.
You know, I know you have a picture of your book. Would you mind showing that on the screen so we can? I like to talk to it and have you kind of run over some of the chapters and some of the messages that you're conveying in that book.
Oh, sure. Hold on. So let me. Um, so this is the book here, The Power, Fragility, and Future of Our Extraordinary Lungs. And, you know, it's been a labor of love. It's been 5 years of writing and editing. You know, the first half, I talk about the origins of our breath. You know, there wasn't always oxygen in the atmosphere, where oxygen came from, how we breathe, why we breathe. I talk a little bit about birds, actually, and how they have radically different lungs than ours, and in some ways more efficient. You know, they fly at 30,000 feet. Um, I talk about sort of the fragility of the lungs too. There's a lot of air in them. They do a tremendous amount of work, 10,000 breaths a day, you know, moving enough air like in a big swimming pool every day, 7.5 million a year. So, and then the middle third of the book, I talk about, you know, um, different diseases and how far we've come with different diseases. IPF, asthma. There's been a huge increase in asthma, a huge increase in IPF, but tremendous strides in these diseases as well, and big stories of resiliency. In the last third of the book, I have 2 big chapters dedicated to cystic fibrosis, just because of what I do to highlight issues like Anna has mentioned. It's, as you mentioned, the CF Foundation is a powerhouse, a lot of lessons for other diseases to be learned there. I have a chapter on lung transplant too. There's 200 lung transplants in 1990, and today we do 3,000 a year. So that's been a miracle to share that breath of life with people through lung transplant. And
we look at our transplant patients. I almost want to call them survivors, but they're not. They're patients, even though they've changed diseases. They kind of traded one disease for another, the transplant. And they're heroes to us. I mean, they really are, because we know collectively what they go through, not just the operation, but the after. And this unsung heroes to us, and I'm sure this is more than true in cystic fibrosis, are the caregivers. They really do the heavy lifting. It's our caregivers who inspire us and keep us in line. My wife, Patty's my caregiver. She won't call herself that. She calls herself a supporter, which she is. But if I'm out of line, she gives me a gentle kick in the fanny to get back on track again. That's so valuable to all of us. And it's kind of like talking about something like depression. It's kind of the elephant in the room. We all know it's there. No one talks about it. Our caregivers are so precious. I would hope in this book, knowing how inspiring it is to have that wealth of knowledge and insights and an action plan, that caregivers in particular have access to a book like that. Because I think it would help them in their journey, because their journey is right next to us. I mean, we're kind of walking down the same path, and maybe same problems and opportunities, but the same path. Well, if I want to buy the book, where would I buy it?
Oh, you could get it at Barnes and Noble, Amazon. It's available everywhere. It's coming out from Atlantic Monthly Press in New York City, and certainly audio book, Kindle. So it's all of it. It's all readily available.
So I can pop my earplugs in and jump on my little elliptical, and I can read and learn.
Yeah, you can hear about yourself and patients like Anna.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank both of you for sharing a little time, a little insight and wisdom. In fact, a lot of insight and wisdom, not a little. Anna, it has been an absolute pleasure. I hope we have a chance to chat at some point in time. I know you're very involved in the rare disease community as well as cystic fibrosis, and that's helping us, and we in turn want to help you, so I want to thank you. And Dr. Stephen, what you're doing, I just have to tell you, it's so needed right now, and so needed by so many people, particularly with this fear we all have about the aftermath of the long haul COVID. Is that going to be fibrosis, pulmonary fibrosis, progressive? We don't know, but I think we're all watching it pretty close.
Yeah, we certainly are. And thank you both, Anna and Bill. You've given me my purpose in life, and there's nothing bigger or more important than that.
Excellent.
I want to thank you both.
Well, thank you, guys. I appreciate the time, and we'll have this online hopefully this week, and we'll have links, by the way, to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation for you, Anna, and of course, I'll link to the book, Dr. Stephen, and people that are interested in the book and click the link and take a look at it, and hopefully support you in your mission.